But where the dream died is I went to university and my plan was to take computer science and drama as a minor. And essentially the drama department said, well, we don't have minors in drama. You need to be in or you're out. And I was like, well, I don't need to do this. I need a computer science degree because I need to have a career.
Hey everyone, welcome to the How I Got Here podcast. I'm your host, Trevis Waters, and I created this podcast to share stories worth telling, whether it's someone that went from zero to hero, hero to zero, or something in between. On today's episode, we talked to Mr. Steven Kenway, the CEO of Rolling Insights, learn about how his passion for hockey turned into a passion for acting and eventually led him to where he is today. Let's go ahead and jump into our conversation with him now, and I hope you guys enjoy. Hey guys, it's me, Trevis, with the How I Got Here podcast. Today we are joined by Mr. Steven Kenway, who I have known for a few years now. But in case you never heard this man, you never saw his face, do a quick high-level overview of title, role, company, and all that stuff you got going on right now.
Thanks, Travis. Thanks for having me on. I'm the CEO. I prefer the term leader of the team because I'm not big on titles. But CEO of Rolling Insights, and we've got a couple of products. I'll get into more of those later. But we fashion ourselves as a data provider for all.
You do know that leader of team is still technically a title, right?
I, yes. Okay.
You just want more letters
You got
in
me
the name.
there.
The little magnetized name tag that you get when you're like a server at Denny's. You got leader of team. You just want more letters there.
I want to get like a hockey jersey that just says like C, like captain. I'd be okay with that. That would make me more
But
comfortable.
on the back, you have this crazy McDonald's arc, or I mean, not McDonald's because there's not only one, but it's just leader of team spelled out on the back there.
Yeah.
So what we like to lead off with these episodes here for the show is kind of going into your earliest memory possible of the very first time that you can recall that you had and just an interest, potential job or career, whether you're 5 years old or maybe you haven't thought about this till like late middle school, early high school. What's the earliest memory you can think of? How old were you, and what was the first thing you wanted to be?
Well, I definitely would have gone two ways as a child. Pro hockey player, being up in Canada and playing hockey, it was the dream of many children. And I was fortunate enough to kind of play high level hockey, my high level minor hockey, as a kid. So was you know there was a lot of guys who I played with who ended up with that being their designated career. And then the other one is, and I think it's something that we share is theater. Is I was a bit of a theater nerd, bit of a drama nerd, and so quite loved acting and performing, and saw that as a potential career path as well. But uh, academically, I was always very good, and I was always very good at math. I come from a family of accountants, and so it's not really surprising that I went into computer science when those other areas probably were more of hobbies, where this became more of a profession.
So was the like you said the oft Canadian dream of being a hockey player and the acting side, was this simultaneous? Was this both? What do I want to do when I grow up? Oh, I want to do one or the other. And I don't know if we kind of touched on it, but like how old were you when you knew that you wanted to play professional hockey, or is it just something that like as the millisecond you're born in the country of Canada, you want to be a hockey player?
For me, definitely like my earliest memories are playing hockey, and uh, like I can remember. I think I would have been 3 years old uh, with one of my buddies, Robbie Butchert, who might listen to this. Our dads played hockey together, and so we went and skated together. I can also remember because I lived across the street from a lake, and it was a man-made lake in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. They had a fence around it, and they would freeze the ice. It would get like 13 inches, and there'd be huge hockey games on it throughout the winter, but it would close early in the season, fairly early. And so my dad would sneak us under the fence and we would go play under the moonlight on the lake. And so those are some of my earliest memories, which then fashioned into you're looking at the NHL. And, I lived in a city that had professional sports, won the Stanley Cup around that time. So it's as early as I can remember was like, I want to be a hockey player.
Then what was the kind of the age range where you started getting into the theatrics of things, where you're like, hey, I like the performing side, I like being on stage, or kind of when did that? So I mean, hockey, like you said, like is your earliest possible memory, and then was it? So how old are you for the acting side of thing, and then was it because like you had like a class in school that was like drama, or how? I guess how did that come to be? Like, what were you doing that got you interested in that?
Yeah. So I was always a bit of a ham. I'm probably more serious at this stage in my life than I ever have been. But I was always a ham. And always, I think if you were to go back and like look at the tapes, kind of performing, I remember, two of my buddies when we were kids, this was like grade one or two, we had like a concert and hosted a concert. And even though music isn't really my thing, but being on stage is. And then in the elementary school that I went to, they had in grade four, five, and six a theater production. So the first year I was essentially an extra, and then the next year I was cast as one of the leads. And then in grade six, I was cast as the main character, which didn't go very well and was a great lesson to learn. Like to put yourself out there and not have it go well taught me a lot about life.
When it didn't go well, was that the transition away from maybe this isn't for me, or was that just a learning experience that you still had like so much interest in? Okay, that sucked, but I think I still want to do this.
Yeah, I think it was exactly that. And it's funny because, people will say, "Well, why do you think you're good at what you do?" And part of it is because I have unexplained confidence,
I like that
like
term.
undeserved confidence, where it's like, "Yeah, that didn't go very well. Oof, okay, well, let's try it
Yeah.
again. Let's do it again."
So
And yeah,
a follow up on that is, so when you were doing this, when you had the interest in this, did this supersede the hockey, or was it just an alternate plan in case hockey didn't work out?
they were in parallel. And in my house as a kid, it was very active. Like we were constantly doing stuff. I've got two brothers. And so it was hockey in the winter. It was soccer and lacrosse in the summer, golf in the summer, school during the winter, theater alongside of hockey. I can even remember, so in grade seven, um, there was an older uh, girl in our school who like remembered that I had done some of that theater stuff in elementary school. And she was part of the debate and speech club and had gone to the teacher and was like, you need to recruit this grade sevener to come and participate in this. But it wasn't cool. So I was like, I don't really want to do this because I'm going to get made fun of. And it was going through that kind of like first exiting elementary school into junior high where cool, like I'm no longer wearing sweatpants and I've transitioned into jeans. And and so I was like, I remember crying and being like, telling my mom, I'm like, I don't want to do this. And she was like, you should do it. Like you're good at it. Like you're gonna do it. And so I participated in two of those events. The first one I read the hockey sweater, which is like a good old Canadian, and I did storytelling for that one. Then the second one I did a monologue and I did Forrest Gump. And I cut my hair like Forrest Gump. It was a big movie at the time. I'm old. Cut my hair like Forrest Gump, and I won. I won the speech competition. And the funny part is then I had to go to hockey immediately afterwards, after winning, with my hair cut like Forrest Gump. And like I walk into the dressing room and guys are like, "What is going on here? That can't be your haircut." I was like, "No, no, I was just in a theater competition, drama nerd." And they were like, "Drama nerd?" And we were in like grade eight or nine at that point. Very vulnerable age. But yeah, anyways, it was all in parallel.
I It's so funny that one of the first things you said on the show was like some parallels that you and I have, sports now, theatrics, doing the acting stuff. But like in your most recent response, I found like a few more like almost ridiculously exact parallels. So first you said you don't want to do this because it's nerdy. You want to be cool now. You want to transition. So when I was in middle school, my mom made all of her kids play an instrument in middle school. So that was the only thing that was essentially forced upon us because she knew that it brought the bit like a different learning ability to learn how to read music, to learn all these things. Middle school only. If you want to take it to high school, that is your option. So because it was forced upon me, because I love challenges from a very early age, I played the tuba and I was winning these awards, left and right for county and all state, all these things. And when when it got to ninth grade high school, my high school that I went to won like every year they won state marching band competitions. And so the director's like, "Hey, Trevis, we need a tuba player." And like my school that I went to is right across the street. My middle school is right across the street, so he knew all about the players that are or the
Yeah.
instrument
Even
players that.
scouting.
Yeah, he's with scouting, and I go and I tell him I can't remember what his name was, but I go, I spent 3 years being the nerd, the drama nerd, or not the drama nerd, but the band geek. I go, I'm
Yeah.
playing sports. I'm doing weightlifting, football. I am getting cool now. I did that because my mom forced me to. She says I don't have to do it in high school if I don't want to. Not doing it. He's like, listen, like you're gonna get scholarships and all these things. I go, I don't want to be nerdy anymore. So when you talked about that, I was like, that's so funny. That was another parallel. And then
Yeah.
yeah, it's just funny stuff. Funny stuff. So now to kind of go through, I guess the next part of that follow up is when did both of those dreams die? When did the hockey dream die? When did the acting dream die? And if we don't want to focus on the word them dying, if it's more of when did they transition? When did you find
Yeah.
something that was more this makes more sense for me?
Yeah, and I think there's lessons along the way. So the in it's all kind of changed in Canada, but so minor Bantam played quadrant hockey, major Bantam um again an interesting lesson. So I played on the team that or tried out for the team that ended up winning provincials and then would have gone to like nationals, etc. And I can't remember exactly who was on that team, but like Danny Heatley was on that team, played in the NHL forever. He was like second overall draft pick, a legendary hockey player. He was on that team. There was a bunch of other guys. I think if you went back and look at it, I think on that team there would have been like 10 guys that played pro hockey. And so the funny part is at that age, like I was, you grow up and then you hit puberty at different times. So at that age, I was small. Not that I'm huge today, but I was like small for hockey at that time. Where now I'm probably below average, but not considered small. And um, uh, I thought I'd made the team. I play defense, and they'd made the cuts, and there was six defensemen remaining, which is normally what you would fashion a team with. And so I was like, "Oh man, I made it. This is great." But there's still two cuts to be made on the team. And so for the final cut, I got called in, and I was shocked that they were going to go with five defensemen and an extra forward. And in retrospect, if you look at it, like they literally had all of these talented forwards, eventually guys that went and played professional hockey at the highest level and, became superstars. So it's not surprising, but in the moment, it was a lesson learned. It was like, don't cash that check or the money's until the money's in the bank, until you've cashed that check, don't start spending it because it might something can happen. And that was one thing that carried forward into my startup life. If you've got like a deal signed or a deal, verbally or signed or whatever, until you receive that check, don't spend the money because something can happen. So that was where things kind of shifted.
Is that also where
Still love
the
playing.
the blind confidence came from? That now in retrospect you're like, oh, I was the last cut on an all NHL team, so I guess I was actually pretty good.
Well, it does not probably not, but it is interesting because when I started going and playing hockey other places, I realized how good my cohort was in Calgary at that time. Um, and it did put things in perspective. It's like, well, I was cut from this particular team, but if I went to probably most teams in the country at that time, probably would have made it at that level. Get higher, it's a different story, but at that, would have 14 years old, would have made the team. So, and I probably, because there's two, the way that it breaks up is they've got different quadrants. So if I would have been in a different quadrant, probably would have made the team at that level as well. Because this team was just so good. So it puts things in perspective that sometimes, it's all relative. It's not an absolute. I wasn't absolutely cut from all hockey at that age group, which leads into another kind of lesson later for hockey. Um, but what ultimately would happen is that I played what they call community that year, met a bunch of new dudes, had a great year. I was one of the better players on that team, and it was a lot of fun. Um, at that point, my parents made the decision to move to the Middle East. So my dad moved in January of that year, and then we followed in the summer in like June. So that's ultimately what kind of at that point it was like, okay, I'm probably not going to be a hockey player. I'm going to a country that doesn't have any hockey. We
I'm
moved
sure
to Qatar.
I'm sure sand hockey's a thing, street hockey. So
I'm confident I can say that at that time I was probably the best
hockey.
junior hockey player in Qatar.
So I understand that the that huge life transition to a completely different country, different culture, and everything. But what about the acting side? Did that also die along with this trip as well?
No, so that continued, and they had a drama program. And so in grade 10, I probably continued to accelerate, and I probably had even more of a path in that regard. Like I participated in, the high school productions, and I remember the first one. Uh, it was a play about alcoholism, teenage alcoholism, which I thought was a bit of a strange choice from the theater department. And they didn't really have a role for me as a grade tenor, but the person running the production felt that I had some talent, and so they actually recast a female role for me into a male role, um, and did really well in that production. Probably overacted a bit and over stole a little bit of the spotlight from some of my uh, co-stars who were probably upset about it. But it was really fun. I really enjoyed it. And then I was in another production that year, and then I was starting to get like offers to participate as kind of like a child actor for paid. And then we moved. So that all ended. But moving to the Middle East, they had theater there. And then I only spent 1 year in the Middle East. And then I came back and went to boarding school in Canada. And that's where I resumed playing hockey. And again, it's a bit of a hockey factory. It's Notre Dame in Saskatchewan. And a bunch of NHLers were at the school at the time, like living in the same dorm rooms. But I also continued acting there. Well, we don't have minors in drama. You need to be in or you're out. And I was like, well, I don't need to do this. I need a computer science degree because I need to have a career. And I want to do this because I'm really, really good at it. So, and I participated in like a few productions, etc. But I was kind of like, I'm better than this. I don't need to be doing this stuff. I have my sights on larger things. And the lesson there was you need to remain humble because if you don't do the things that will get you there, no one's just going to hand you. There's no entitlement, etc. And so that attitude took away a whole bunch of opportunities for me at that time. And once I kind of realized it, it was very hard to get back into the mix. And that was the end of that. But it was a very good lesson of remain humble at all times.
So essentially, the lack of opportunity to focus on the computer science career and also continue acting was not presented as available to you. It's either you're all in or you're all out, like you were saying.
Yeah.
So, I completely agree with the on the humble side of things for the lesson learned. But is that associated to the fact that you were presented at this make or break ultimatum? I mean, I don't. It doesn't sound like it was your lack of being humble that kind of tore this idea away. It was that you were actually focused on your future. Like, I want to do something that I know this degree is more likely going to give me a job that pays X, Y, Z than a degree in acting. Even though I went that route, and here I am. But
The,
go ahead.
yeah. Well, there was a bunch of like smaller production stuff that I could have. participated in, and I chose not to because I felt like I'd already done that and I was above that, and I was like waiting for someone to essentially say, "Hey, you're a star. You were a star in high school. Here's a role in a much bigger production, or here's TV, or here's movies, or whatever." And um, when you're sitting at home not participating, no one's gonna come and give you those opportunities. You gotta like earn your way in, and any of that historical stuff that I was like a quote unquote the lead in these plays, like it doesn't mean anything when you move somewhere else. They have no idea. They don't know the
Yeah.
history of it. And so I that was the arrogant side of things. Like what I should have done is I should have gone and participated in all that stuff, become a member of the community, and all of that other stuff would have followed suit. Like the only thing I think I did at that time was one takeout commercial,
For what?
which
Do you remember the restaurant?
Mino's Takeout in Kingston, Ontario, which was hilarious because they played it every night during David Letterman. So when I would go to the bar, people were like, "There's the guy from Mino's Takeout."
So you were a local celebrity. All right. So uh, at this juncture where the educational system is saying make all in or all out, what is your age roughly here? About 15?
Uh, that would have been 18. I
Well,
would have
no,
been 18.
that was when you were in university, right?
Yeah, first
Oh,
year university. Yeah.
gotcha. Okay, so at that point when they told you like in or out, did you have um, an idea to okay, I'm for school, I'm gonna do computer science, but for acting, let me find opportunities outside what the school offers, or was it just I'm just gonna put that in my back pocket for now and just focus on computer science?
So there's kind of two things that were in my mind at that time. So the first thing is, just kind of go back to hockey for a minute. So moved to the Middle East for a year. I kind of realized my hockey dream is dead. But then I go back to boarding school and I'm at Notre Dame and I'm playing hockey and I'm playing junior B, junior C. It was kind of a new junior B team, and then we played in the junior C league. And the interesting thing is when I graduated high school, I was like, okay, I've got really good grades. I'm going to go to the best school that I can go to. And so I got in at Queens, which is in Kingston, Ontario. And I was like, okay, well, I'm an academic now. And all these other things, everyone tells you when you go to school, you need to focus. I don't need to, I'm not going to do any of this other stuff because I'm going to need to be solely focused on education. So I could have probably kept playing hockey, but I retired. And that is I have very few regrets in life. That is one thing that I wish I had kind of kept doing at university was like keep playing junior B and go to school, which would have been totally achievable. And then the flip side is uh, is going and continuing to pursue some of those opportunities outside. But in my mind, I was like, well, those opportunities will just come to me, and I need to stay focused on academics.
So you still kept doing the hockey thing. It's not that you it was no. So was it just like a hobby thing when you're doing it at Notre Dame, or was it maybe still an opportunity for me to actually make this into a career? So, I mean, of course, it's an interest. Like you always want to play sports, especially if you played sports your entire life. But when you got to that point, what was I guess the end game at that point for hockey? Was it just I love this, I'm fun, I'm good at it, or was it maybe I can actually
Exactly.
get paid with this?
Yeah, I knew at that point that probably wasn't going to get paid. And uh, my dad always told me as a kid, playing pro hockey is a great privilege. But what you really want to be shooting for is a scholarship so that you can turn athletics into an education. And so at Notre Dame, that was probably still in the back of my mind, but it's very competitive in Notre Dame. Like you go there and you take a collection of hockey players from around the world who are all the like kind of top of their pile, and um, uh, put them in one small town in Saskatchewan. And so it's interesting because you have all these kids who they're superstars where they come from, and then they come there and they're kind of average or normal. And uh, no, I don't think I really fit that bill, but I definitely knew at that point that, you know, I'm probably smart enough to get into a really, really good school, and that'll be, my opportunity for a great career.
Okay, so we back pocketed the acting because we got the ultimatum. You were cut early on from the All NHL All Star team, and then you kind of brought that back into your life. But I guess the question we haven't asked yet is when you originally went to school for computer science, and then throughout your educational journey through the university, what was like kind of end game with what you wanted to pursue by getting that degree?
Yeah. So when I first went to Queens, I was actually in math, pure math. Um, and again, very, very competitive institution. There was 300 students in math, and only 50 make it to second year. So you got to be, one in six. And in Canada, this is like a bunch of almost unnecessary detail, but in Canada, you have grade 12 across the board. And in Ontario, where that school is, there's grade 13. So a lot of the people that I would have been competing with in first year, they had grade 13. I'd also say that like I wasn't very good at studying. I hadn't really figured out how to like study. I was just very good at sitting in class, absorbing information, and then writing exams. And it worked out. Getting to the next level, it was like, okay, I really am at a disadvantage because I don't know how to study. I don't know how to learn. And I'm trying to make up for a whole year of school because everyone's at least 1 year older than me. So I didn't make the cut. And I even had halfway through the year, one of my algebra professors was like, I think you should just drop out. Like you're not very, you're not going to make it.
That's just the
And
best thing to hear from somebody that you view as well in the professor realm or guidance counselor or anything like that. Like, hey, like this, you should probably just leave. You should leave.
yeah. And again, I think this is kind of that undeserved confidence. I was like, no, no, I'm not going anywhere, sir. I'm sticking to the end, even if I fail. And he was right. I did fail and didn't make the cut. But it parlayed into computer science. And at the time, this is in, you know, 2000, 1999, 2000. Obviously, computer science was a popular and very fruitful. So it probably ended up working out in the end. Um, at the time, I, in my mind, I was very much kind of dreaming of starting a startup. And
Even early on with this computer science degree or prior to even getting it, you're like, I want to start my own company with this.
yeah, start a startup. We would talk with buddies. And so some people will know this fact, but Elon Musk went to Queen, went to the same university. And at that, just after that time, they were starting PayPal. And I think Elon was living in Toronto. And so he was like an absolute legend. It was like, oh my God, this guy who's in the physics program, he's starting PayPal, and we're like buying stuff on eBay and using PayPal to pay for it. And it was like, so he was like a little bit of an idol in the early 2000s for us who were at Queens.
So we finish the degree, or we we do finish the degree, right? I guess I didn't ask that part. Did you
Finished it.
actually like stay there
Finished it.
and
Yeah.
hold in there? So did you? I guess how long after you graduated? So like you said, like 99, 2000, around that time. How long after you completed your degree did you get a job that actually utilized your talents earned through this degree, or just related to it in some sense?
Yeah. So if you look at what was going on in the world, the dot-com bubble burst. So when I started, it was like this is the hottest industry, hottest profession. When I finished, there wasn't a job out there, and they definitely weren't hiring new grads. So I'll kind of have a little side tangent for any of the younger viewers because you hear the same things now. It's like, oh, there's no jobs for the kids who are exiting university, and it is so much easier for you old guys. It's all cyclical. Like we went through the same cycles because we're about the same age. We went through the same cycles, and future generations are going to go through similar cycles. So when I exited university, there was no jobs. Like we had Google coming and recruiting, Microsoft, et cetera. None of them were hiring at that point. And so I moved. My parents had temporarily moved back to Canada, and so I moved back to Calgary. My plan originally was to live and work in Toronto because I had gone to school in Kingston. But I came back for the summer, and the summer prior to that, I'd had a summer internship at the time as Calgary Health Region. And I'd done my honors kind of paper or thesis or whatever on the electronic health record. So when I came back to Calgary, I actually got a job. So I was very fortunate in that essentially right out of school, I think I started September 5th, 2004. I was employed and working in the industry and essentially haven't stopped working since. Um, so I was very, very lucky. And Calgary Health Region, for those American viewers, was our local kind of publicly funded health corporation. It's privately owned, but funded by the government and provides, care for the citizens of Calgary and the surrounding area at the time. Um, I'll stop there.
So I think I don't know how much after this point is kind of the backstory that I knew personally prior to um, this episode. That's kind of connecting all the rest of the dots. So you getting the job, you finally get a job that is industry specific, and I
Yeah.
know you said you've kind of been in the space ever since. So how long was it at this one location or this one company, and then kind of like build that computer science resume that led up to the first time you actually got to your dream job, which was you creating the startup, which is kind of your concept you had back when you were 18 or around that
Yeah.
time in college.
Yeah. So, excuse me. When I joined Calgary Health Region, I fortunately got a job on the electronic health record project, which is what I'd done my thesis on. And so that was bleeding edge. And the leadership at the Calgary Health Region at that time was some of the best executives I've ever worked with and for. Um, they had a vision. It was a really, really big, hard problem to solve, and they rewarded people on merit, which is kind of the opposite of big healthcare. A lot of it is based on seniority. So the young whippersnappers that I was working with there, like we worked like dogs, like long hours. And I was able to kind of rise up in the ranks fairly quickly into a project management role, which I'd identified at the time. I was like, I can write code, I can do the technical stuff, but really project management is what makes it happen and the coordination of all these people and kind of managing the complexity of it and the risk. And being a PM is like being a mini CEO. You learn all the skills to essentially run your own company. And I was very fortunate under these executives leader and with their support, educational support as well, because I got my PMP at that time. Um, they were able to create a really, really safe place to learn all those skills
So
while working on some really, really tough, big, hard problems.
while you're doing this, and like you said, like it's
Yeah.
you're learning all the other roles that's not necessarily your roles. You're learning everything you need to know, insides and outs.
Yeah.
Was your mindset at this time more of I need to do this because I need to learn everything, or was it I'm just going to do this because I haven't figured out what brain baby I'm going to actually work on to be my first company I launch? So was it like, because I know you said eating a slice of the humble pie, did you already kind of transition to that mindset where it's like, no, I need to be smarter, I need to know more roles, more things, or was it just you did not have that idea yet to actually put into motion to create your first company?
Yeah, it was, I need to learn all this stuff. I need to prepare myself to then become a founder. Um, Interestingly, and I do think that that helped a lot. Um, the things that I learned working in corporate America um, have definitely shaped the way that we operate as a company at Rolling Insights. And um, without all the overhead, and still while remaining nimble and agile like a startup. And so one of the interesting things around that time is there's another guy who's in the local ecosystem that we know. He'd started two or three startups that had been acquired, et cetera, a little bit older. And I would talk with him and be like, like, I just don't have the right idea, or I'm just not quite ready yet. And he would always be like, what are you waiting for? Like, what do you wait? Like, there's no such thing as a good idea. Ideas are cheap and free. It's the execution of it that really is meaning. And if you just pick one and it's in an industry and there's problems there, et cetera, you're going to pivot and find your way. And eventually, since you know how to build and solve problems, you're going to build a product and a solution that'll solve a problem that people will buy. So I don't know what you're waiting for here, Steve. And I didn't have an answer to that question.
Did you have a lot of when you knew that you had uh, the knowledge of all all the stuff you were absorbing from your project manager role? Did you start getting a lot of what I call brain babies, just like popping in your head, like, oh, this will work. I can do this. I can do this now. Maybe this will be good. This will be good. Or did it be?
Yeah.
Were you? Did you have that more of a tunnel vision of this one thing people will pay for? I need to focus on this one thing. I guess how does your brain work when it comes to brain babies?
I had a million brain babies. And in retrospect, it's funny because like a bunch of them would have been, maybe huge successes if I like started working on them in earnest. Like for example, like one of them called Fitness X, which was a fitness app that you could track all your progress, et cetera. And there'd be devices attached to the machines. You could create accounts and it would create your workouts and all that jazz. I'm certain that if we at that time had built that product, actually started building it, it would have been a huge success. It was before Peloton and all these other things, but in the same realm. And so some of that was, history allows you to kind of look back and be like, huh, okay, I had this idea. I didn't do it because I came with a million excuses. All these other people are doing it and having huge amounts of success. There's no reason why I can't do that. Like I'm a PM on, a electronic health record project that serves 3 million people and has a budget of X millions of dollars and blah, blah, blah. Like, why can't I go and do that? So I think the trigger to go out and start first startup was finding a partner. And so my friend and previous business partner, Brent Lowinger, came to me. We played hockey together. He's a goalie, and we're playing beer league at this point. And he came to me and was like, "Hey, I'm in real estate. There's no technology in real estate. It's ridiculous. We need to start a company in real estate and start building solutions." And so I was like, "Okay, I'm in. Let's do it. It's time." And made the leap of
What
faith. I
year was
say
this here? And
that we would have been talking in 2009,
okay.
and then we kind of made the leap of faith in 2010. Actually, yeah, 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 around there.
So
Um,
I know that you are the you with everything you've been doing up until this point for the last 10 years is very on a technical side. So when you found this person or so you were already friends before this brain
yeah.
baby, I guess. And so if you're the technical person, what did your partner bring to the table skill set wise?
So he was the business side of things. He was the CEO, and he was a realtor, so he had domain expertise. Um, the other thing I will give him credit for, and he's if he listens to this, he's probably gonna laugh, is he has great entrepreneurial spirit. Like he's the type of guy who's just like, yeah, I'm just gonna go and figure it out with no excuses. And so I give him great credit for that. He's very scrappy in that regard. And so I think it was we had our points of contention and disagreements, but I think that the kind of complemented each other well because I was the stable, build it, kind of corporate experience uh, to match his entrepreneurial spirit.
And then so 2009, you start talking about it. You start watering that seed. 2010, is that the actual launch here of this real estate tech
Yeah. We
concept?
launched. It was called Opry at the time. We launched Opry on 10/10/10, October 10th, 2010, and the first version. So we went out and like did a bunch of market research because like the lean startup was a big thing at that time. So we like tested names and surveyed people, et cetera, and we built an early version, and the early version did exactly what the realtors told us what they wanted to. They wanted to eliminate paper and be able to put their files online. And we released it out to the world, and zero people used it.
Was there any ad spend or marketing or anything like that?
We did a little bit on Active Rain and Facebook, and because Facebook was super cheap back then, like you could advertise. It was awesome back then. Now it's very expensive and difficult to, but like you could put $100 on there and get 100 click-throughs. It was like it was like $1 a click-through. It was great. So yeah, we did a bunch of that stuff. Went to a bunch of trade shows. Being a kind of a deep vertical, you have to sell belly to belly in that industry, even though we're selling software online. So we spent a lot of time at trade shows.
And then because you got to a point where you said like you put all this effort into it, you built this, nobody signed up for it. Did it? What was kind of the mindset happening here? Was it, oh, this, let's just throw this away and start a new brain baby, or how do we tweak this to make people actually want it?
Yeah, that was exactly it. So we went um, and looked at the workflow of a realtor. And I remember I have a vision of this in my mind of like, okay, realtor meets their client and then does this and what are all okay, we've got a solution for the electronic storage of these documents. We've got a solution for communicating these documents out. We don't have a solution for electronic signatures. We don't have standard form content. So we kind of got these two big breaks in the process. And so then it was like, okay, well, we kind of need to focus on these problems. And again, we still kept following the lean startup like customer development mentality. So we were meeting with prospective customers, and they were leading us down the road of CRM, which there was already a bunch of CRMs out there, like Salesforce was taking over the world at that time. And so it was kind of like it felt like they were because they weren't customers, they were taking us in a way that didn't make sense because they weren't invested in our company. They weren't using the software. They didn't have, and so, but Brent at the same time continued to foster industry relations, and our local Alberta Real Estate Association. He built some relationships there. We're talking to them, and eventually they kind of came to us and were like, "Hey, would you guys be a forms provider?" Which is one of those breaks in the process that I was mentioning earlier, and we'll provide you with the standard form content and we'll pay you a small amount of to kind of build it, and then we'll help you promote it amongst our membership. And so we were like, absolutely, hell yeah, like let's do it. So we built their form alternative to the Canadian real estate version of it, Canadian Real Estate Association's version of it, and then they promote us among their membership, and that was a one of the major inflection points in our success. The other thing that we did at that time is we partnered with DocuSign. They were young. I think they were like 100 people at the time. And so they provided our electronic signatures in the solution. And that is the relationship with DocuSign is a whole interesting track and story as well.
So, I believe if I'm chronologically keeping up, we're about
Yeah.
2012 right now. Is that right?
Yeah, around there. Yeah. Yeah.
So, what's the, I mean, if you we can go into the DocuSign story if you said to, I don't know how long the story is, but we can dabble in there if you want to kind of go through that because now I'm
Uh,
intrigued. But what is the timeline now up until your I believe, I mean, I don't want to say anything and give anything away, but I believe I know what happens at the end of this road, but I don't know the timeline
yeah.
that gets you there.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe another thing I'll mention that it's critical to the story. So when I was leaving AHS, I saved up all this money and I went and reduced the cost of my life. And I was single at the time. And so that I could work on this startup as long as possible until it started, returning some revenue. And when the first version of the product didn't work, um, had to figure something out. And so at that time, I had been getting a bunch of people kind of inbound trying to get me to come back to the workforce. Like, yeah, your startup's not going to work. You should come back and work with us. And I'd worked with a lot of consultants when I worked at AHS, CHRHS. And so a bunch of those folks were consulting. And one of my kind of colleagues at university, Mike Couch, and another one, Ryan Abreu, two of my good buddies from university, they'd started a consultancy in Toronto. And they had, unfortunately, one of their PMs leave the organization. And so they were in a bind. And they were like, hey, can you come in on contract and just help us manage this project? I said, absolutely. And so that was when Rolling Wave was born. And throughout this process, about 50% of my time was spent doing consulting work, PM consulting work through Rolling Wave. And the other 50% was on Repri. We rebranded as Repri. And so Rolling Wave paid the bills for me personally. And I was able to continue to kind of use, and I had at that point unlimited energy and unlimited time because didn't have a family and all these other constraints. But that in parallel worked really, really well because we didn't have an arbitrary end date. We could keep working on this until we figured it out because we were able to continue to live off some of these other things. Brent continued to sell real estate. I was doing some consulting on the side.
So you're essentially putting all of the revenue that you were getting from the real estate tech company back into it. So you guys aren't essentially paying yourself yet. Um,
Exactly.
so how long did that last for? Or did it last for the entire lifetime of it, where it's like, listen, we'll pay ourselves when we find somebody to buy this, or was it like it just has to get bigger and then we'll start paying ourselves? So what was that kind of discussion with your business partner like?
Well, we did get to a point where it was kind of like, this is consuming so much of our time that we can't make enough money doing the other stuff to cover our life. And so there was an inflection point where, again, can distinctly remember the conversation. He was like, we got to start paying ourselves. Otherwise, I'm going to go bankrupt because I'm not making enough. And this is going like wildfire. So we started very, very small. Like it was like paid ourselves like $2,000 each a month. And then continued to do some of the other stuff on the side. In my particular case, um, I very early on recruited Jeff and Josh to come and join. Jeff first, and then Josh. I actually met Josh at a project management meetup, waiting in line for the washroom. So we met at a bathroom, and
Like all great
yeah,
relationships do.
yeah, they all start in the bathroom. Um, so uh, uh, it came to a point where I was like, "Okay, well, I hate to say this, guys, but like I've got to go over and do this startup for a bit. I'll continue to help you guys from a governance and oversight perspective, and anything that comes in my way where people are asking for my time, I will feed it back into Rolling Wave, and you guys, continue to kind of work and grow the company." And went over and did Repri full time for a number of years. Um, until like we were acquired in 2017. So we met one of our competitors at a trade show, essentially a family out of Montreal that the patriarch had built up this big physical real estate company, and the son was taking over, and he was transitioning their assets into software real estate. So he was buying up a few companies, and so we were part of that acquisition process. He bought, I think, five.
So he's
May have
like,
bought more since I left.
you can't have a competitor if you own the competitors. So just start
Yeah.
scooping them up. And so, so this was essentially about a 7 year journey from actually launching to growing it to then getting to a point where you can pay yourselves even just a little bit to help with bills and everything. Did you? So on your side, did you stop the consulting thing like completely as soon as you started paying yourself, or was it? Uh, did you throughout the rest of the journey up till acquisition, were you still kind of doing consulting, or did you start increasing more of how much the company was paying you?
I was still involved in consulting from a governance perspective, and I still had some compensation being returned from the consulting company. But I wasn't actively working on it. At the time, we actually had a profit sharing kind of scheme in place. And so most of the what I was benefit I was getting was through that profit sharing.
When you were deep into the acquisition talks and you know like, oh, this actually might happen. I think we actually mentioned super early on this that until the paycheck hits the bank, like don't count your chickens before don't count your eggs before don't count your chickens before they
Yeah,
hatch. I don't think I've ever
yeah.
said that out loud, so I had to make sure I said that right. So were you, now that you're in these discussions and you're like, this is actually going to happen, what is your thinking process, your thought process on, was it like, okay, as soon, like maybe you're like a month away from everything being 100% finalized, cash in bank, maybe 2 months away, were you like, okay, once this happens, am I just gonna like take time of not doing things and take a break for the last 7 years of working every single day probably to grow it to this point, or did you already have the next brain baby or the next idea lined up?
Um, so when the interesting thing about the acquisition was there was some cash involved, and then there was opportunity for participation in the greater organization. So the we knew Brent and I knew at that time, and we had pulled in another guy, Dave, who was part of the leadership team. We knew at the time we had to do one of three things. We had to kind of strengthen out the leadership team and start hiring more individuals to kind of help grow it. We had to um, uh, we had to either raise money, which might have been affected kind of the first one as well, or we had to get acquired because we were at a point where we were like bursting at the seams in our kind of current configuration. Um, and then this opportunity kind of came where it was like, well, you guys can get some cash in your jeans. You guys have been kind of eating ramen for a long time, and you can participate in the upside of this kind of greater vision of bringing all these companies together. So I once the acquisition occurred, I was the CTO at Next One. They were the acquiring company. For 3 years after that, we had five products, et cetera. So I kind of transitioned into the company, and at the time I was like all in. I'm like, man, we could turn this thing into something big, and there could be a second payday here. What I quickly learned is um and the family, the Vasquez family is awesome. I really like, if Max is listening to this, Max is awesome. Love Max. I quickly realized that we were not part of the family. I was like, we're not in the family. We're not part of the future of this. So we can talk about all this, but at the end, when you're part of, like, when there's a family that owns the company, it's going to stay in the family, and the family makes the decisions, and the family does what's right for them. And I totally get it. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's great. But again, it was a lesson learned of like going into that. I was maybe a bit naive on how strong that family legacy was and how it would play into decision making going forward. But I really enjoyed my time there. It was awesome, and I learned a lot. and I learned a lot about uh, getting acquired, and I learned a lot about acquiring companies because we acquired one company while I was there as well.
So time wise, we're looking at about 2020 is when you step down for being the CTO. You're like, all right, this is the whole family thing where you have either one foot out the door or both feet out the door at this point. I know you said while you were prior to acquisition, you were doing the consulting to help pay the bills. Rolling Wave, I guess, was it like the full name, like Rolling Wave Consulting, or just
Yeah.
anything? Yeah, okay, so you're doing that now. Now that you know that you're not part of the future plan, or you just maybe don't want to be part of the future plan because you're on the outside looking in with this the family concept. Were you like, all right, well, like just go back to the consulting side of things, or did you already kind of have another brain baby lined up?
So there was two things that happened in that time, and trying to, yeah, I'll share this. I'll just won't share too many details. But so the first thing that happened is the pandemic, which
Right.
like took the whole world and shook it up. And one of the things that Next One was worried about, which I completely understand, they're like, well, if people can't get together, how are we going to sell real estate? How are we going to have customers? Because there's going to be no real estate going on. Everyone's just going to be trapped in their homes. So there was definitely a panic of like, holy, what are we going to do here? And at that point, there was a bunch of things being thrown around. And I was like, you know what? I think this is my time to exit. Um, the other thing that I had kind of done before that is I'd gone to Max and was like, hey, you're a finance guy. Is there something else that we can work on? And I can go away and lead it and run it, and you can finance it and you can be an investor and we can kind of, but I'll have some independence. And so I thought there would be some opportunity there. Um, but again, I think within their kind of family umbrella, doesn't fit their model. Like they're invested, they're in it, having kind of these other bets outside. Maybe he had a bunch of other bets that I wasn't aware of. Um, but it just didn't really fit the model. And then with the pandemic, I was like, I think it's time to leave. And I knew, um, at that time, I can't remember how many people would have been part of Rolling Wave. Rolling Wave just kept growing naturally behind the scenes. And so one of the things that Jeff, Josh, and I talked about is like, okay, we're still relatively young here. We're making really good money. Um, we're investing in our own, wealth management plans. Um, should we maybe combine our efforts? We've got all the ingredients to create successful companies. We go out as consultants and work on people's dreams all the time. We should have our own dreams, or we should be invested in some of these dreams. And so we made the decision to break the profit sharing agreement and take the profits and start investing them into startups. So we partnered with a bunch of startups and invested in them, and then we made the decision to start a product development arm of the consulting company, which is where Rolling Insights was born.
And then I think, I mean, we dabbled on at the very beginning when we went over current title, not title, but so Rolling Wave, has it always been a consultant company, and is that what it is still today?
Yes, yeah,
And
it's a
then
consultancy. Yeah.
so I understand the whole investing in other companies and things like that, but where I guess I missed the connection between like what was whose brain baby was it for this the sports data concept that is what Rolling Insights is? Where did that kind of grow from?
Yeah, so we said, okay, well, what do we want to get involved in? So we've got a few consulting relationships, and we were working on those, and we had the thesis that if we're working inside of these companies and we put a little bit of money in, working inside of them, we're actually going to see what their chances are of success and survival. And then so that would be good to kind of bring a little bit of money behind that and then participate in the upside. So we did that a few different times. And um, we learned a little bit of a lesson there as well. In this thing, this is common with investing, is like you're not running the show, you don't make all the decisions. And so even though you're in there as a consultant, they may or may not do what you say. Even though you've got your money in there, they're going to kind of do what they want. And so we wanted a little bit more control. And so when we started the product development side of things, we went back and said, okay, where can we start? Well, we've got deep experience in relationships in healthcare. Um, we've got a lot of experience in relationships in marketing automation, real estate from my real estate perspective. Josh worked in sports previously because he was at Sportsnet and or the Score at the time and Covers.com. And so we kind of looked at it and we're like, well, there's one common theme is that there's a divergence between the stuff that's happening in technology that technologists have access to and what non-technologists have access to. And it's interesting because I think modern LLMs and generative AI have actually kind of started to pull that back together. But at the time, machine learning, all this stuff, like if I was playing fantasy sports or if I'm working in a large organization trying to understand my sales automation data, as a technologist, I can just go and use these tools. They're off the shelf. I can build my own thing and, tap into that technology of the future. But the everyday person can't do that. And so on that premise, we looked at the different industries I mentioned. Healthcare, the sales cycle is so long that as a startup, unless you have deep pockets, you're probably going to die. Marketing automation, a little bit shorter sales cycle, but you're selling into the enterprise in most cases. And that's difficult. Real estate, okay, we could go back into real estate, except it's a very protected world. I said the same thing to Jesse when I was on his podcast. There's a kind of a fiefdom that's been created by the old boys club, and they block a bunch of people out. So you have to like break through that barrier to get into real estate to have, and we had to go through that whole struggle. And to be honest, personally, I was kind of like, I don't really want to go through that again and have to like break down all those walls to get in. So then we learned sports. PASPA had just been passed. There was a lot of investment dollars coming in, so we knew there'd be a whole bunch of new startups. The leagues themselves were reimagining fan engagement, so it seemed like perfect timing.
So, how soon after COVID, because that's the last time we kind of like associated to a year with something, did the rolling insights, the sports data side of things, when did that officially go live?
So the first product, our first thesis is that we would try to provide um, data to the everyday fan, democratize the access to sports data. And at the time, as a fantasy sports player, probably less sports betting at that time, but interested in it. I had a really hard time getting access to the data. And I felt like all the products that are out there, like if you were playing on Yahoo, everyone's using the exact same Yahoo data and Yahoo list and you can't export or download it. So you're like scraping it and putting it in a spreadsheet or a database. And so, or you go to Fantasy Pros, which I think they've got a great product, but you go to Fantasy Pros and it's like extremely rigid. You don't know how some of the values are calculated. You can't see the underlying formulas. So our thesis was there's a whole bunch of nerds out there like me that want access to the data. And so that's where Sportwise was born, allowing people to kind of create their own data sets from the kind of large volume of sports data out there, and then use that in real time to go in and manage their teams, manage their bets, manage their just as fans be able to track their favorite team while they're watching the game, etc. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it is a super spreadsheet as we kind of call it.
So we have gone on quite the journey from. I know you said your earliest memory is age 3 of hockey, but we can just both agree that it was probably before that, before your earliest
Yes.
memory. So one of the so my not one of the thing I like to leave our watchers and our listeners on is if you were to go through the entirety of this journey that we just went on, and you were to find out of all of the decisions that someone else made for you or the decisions that you were actually able to make yourself, what is the number one butterfly effect that because of this happened because of you or to you in your control, outside of your control? What's that number one butterfly effect that you attribute to where you are today to?
It's a really hard question.
I like hard questions. Now you got to think about it.
I got to think about it. So I would say that the first thing that comes to mind, and it's not something that I've even talked about today, was the first realization that I could lead a team and start something from nothing was when I lived in the Middle East. And they had these essentially like oil can like raft races. I can't remember exactly what it was called. And so all these different corporate teams, et cetera, and they came to the school and they're like, hey, do any of you crazy kids want to build a raft out of essentially oil cans and then race in this race? And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And I'll recruit some people and we'll build a raft out of oil cans. And that to me was the first point where I was like, I can build something from nothing. And interestingly enough, we lost that race. I don't think we built a very good raft,
Somebody drowned.
but yeah, everyone made it. Everyone made it. But that was the point. That was the one when I think of entrepreneurial, like, people will talk about, oh, I had a lemonade stand when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I sold this, I did that. I didn't do any of that. I played sports. That was it. All my free time is sports and drama and academics. And I followed the exact grade three, grade four, grade five, plan that was laid out to me up until that point. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. I could do something different. I just have to put my hand up.
So, yeah, that is quite interesting how something so small in terms of at the time, just you people building a raft can actually have um, that triggering effect to expand your thought process on what is and isn't possible. But yeah, so we have went from hockey at birth to the not CEO but leader of the team of Rolling Insights. Um, is there anything else while we have the attention of the listeners and the viewers you want to add real quick? I mean, the floor
Maybe
is yours.
one part of the story, and I know that we're probably wrapping up on time. And it's been long, and I apologize to everyone boring you with the details. But the last piece of the so we started building Sportwise, and we had a very difficult time getting access to data. And so we eventually met a company out of Minnesota. They had data. It was during the pandemic. I'm like, great, we've got data. It's pretty good. And then they notified us that they were going out of business. And so we said, hey, wait, before you do that, let's try to do a deal. And so we bought their assets and their customers in a bunch of different pieces. And that's how Data Feeds was born. And the interesting thing is, so Sportwise, I love Sportwise. I use it every single day. But the real opportunity within Rolling Insights is Data Feeds, powering other people's ideas, powering PlayerProps.ai's data. And that's where we're having a lot of success. I think that's where our growth trajectory is in that B2B space, being a support being the kind of underlying ingredients and platform for people to build their ideas. And then us being able to even share our expertise, et cetera, through the Breakaway Accelerator with those companies. So I wanted to mention that part because I think that pivot is so those finding those pivots and those opportunities as entrepreneurs are so instrumental. You start with one idea, and then all of a sudden there's this opportunity that presents itself somewhere else. You got to say no to all the other ones and kind of pick that one, and then that becomes your thing. And in many ways, data feeds is defining us right now more than Sportwise. Although I do believe that Sportwise in the future will have an opportunity to shine at a later stage.
All right. Well, appreciate that last note there. Appreciate your time as well. As you guys see on the screen, his name is Steven Kenway. If you want to look him up and send a friend request or a connection or whatever LinkedIn calls their things, go ahead and send it to him. But I can't guarantee he'll accept it. But appreciate your time, Steve. And yeah, make sure you guys subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening to this, wherever you're watching this from. We go every Tuesday morning at 6 a.m. Eastern Time, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Hope you enjoyed.
Thanks, Travis.